Hi, I'm Rashanah Baldwin, a journalist, a Chicagoan, and a millennial bringing light to everyday stories that matter. I share the type of stories that mainstream media ignores or gets wrong. The news of the neighborhoods, the news that matters. Here is someone you need to know. Afternoon, Rob Rose. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
So, Rob Rose, you're the executive director of the Cook County Land Bank here in Chicago, Illinois, in the state of Illinois. Tell us a little bit about what you all do.
Sure. So the Cook County Land Bank Authority is a county agency. We were created in 2013 to address vacant and abandoned properties throughout the county. So we were created as a unit of county government. So that's one of the questions that we get. We are not a nonprofit agency. We're not a financial institution. We are an agency of Cook County. So we were created under the office of Tony Preckwinkle. But we have an independently appointed board of directors. And that board is chaired by Commissioner Richard Gaynor. And the board consists of a combination of city and county officials, suburban mayors, banking, nonprofit folks, housing advocates, open land advocates. And this board, it really gives us the opportunity to be very nimble and to be very reactive or proactive, I should say, in the marketplace, in a very dynamic marketplace, so that we don't have to go through as much red tape to get things done. And we are able to have programs that are actually able to be effective in dealing with crises as they arise.
So you all do help individuals purchase and acquire property?
Yeah, so we have a couple of tracks. We have one program called our Home Buyer Direct program that we work specifically with owner occupants who are looking to purchase real estate. They rehab it themselves, either their own sweat equity or they hire a contractor to do the work, and then they live in that house. And we have houses set aside specifically for them. Then we have homes that we work with developers and investors. They purchase the house, rehab it, and then they sell to a homeowner. In some cases, they rent it out. And then the third track is our commercial track, where we have properties that are being purchased, both commercial and industrial properties or mixed-use properties, where they're purchased, rehab, and then they either serve as the landlord or they may occupy themselves in terms of a business and operate the business out of it. And so those three different tracks really cover the full range of the neighborhoods within the county, both in the city of Chicago and in suburban Cook, where we cover homeowners, we cover investors, developers, we also cover business owners.
Do we have a third guest here? Is that your puppy in the background?
That my puppy? No, you hear that there's a lawnmower outside, but my puppy's locked up in the garage.
I hear barking. Okay. What is the state? Describe the state of the real estate right now. The state of real estate, the market, the housing market. Where are we at right now as it relates to COVID? We're coming out of it slowly.
Right. Slowly.
Yeah.
So I think the fair thing to say is that right now we are in a wait and see state. There are positive and negative indicators around what's happening for the future. And so right now we're waiting to see how things break. So positive is, prior to COVID, we actually had a pretty robust economy, right? So we saw the interest rates were low. We saw that unemployment was low in terms of unemployment rate. Wages were going up. We had people who were actually now looking to get back into the market that were affected by the downturn in 2008. So we've been seeing an increase in that. And we also see an increase in millennial buyers, right? That they've gotten to a point where homeownership is something they're really focused on. And we saw that shift. So those are very positive things that we had going pre-COVID. Now, in this environment, we do see credit tightening up. We see banks that are change their credit standards, with what's happening. Most recently, the Fed is actually, or this administration is trying to relax some of the CRA rules for the national banks, and we think that's going to have an effect on lending in our communities. But so we have some of those things.
Pause right there. All over that. CRA. People may not know what that means. And then is that a good thing or a bad thing if that becomes relaxed?
So CRA, Community Reinvestment Act, this is landmark legislation that was really championed by organizers here in Chicago led by Gail Sincata back in the 70s that really forced banks to be accountable to the communities in which they were extracting the value. So it simply said that if you are gathering deposits from a certain geographic area, you have a responsibility to also then make your banking services available to the people in that area. And there's a series of tests that they now do to make sure that banks are compliant, with this act. And this is important because that disclosure was important. We need to know that if I'm gathering deposits in a certain neighborhood, you're also offering mortgages and business loans and other services there in that area. By relaxing that requirement, you again then allow banks to come into the neighborhoods and exploit the neighborhoods where they can take the deposits and they can hold your money, but they don't have to then in return make the services available to you. They don't have to make home loans, business loans, auto loans, anything like that in the area. And so it really is rolling back the intent, which is to hold them accountable to you as they have your money. So no, I don't see that as a positive in terms of the rollback. And we've seen this with this administration where they've been chipping away at a lot of the gains that have been made and really trying to roll back regulations, but not roll back regulations to free up the market. It's rolling back regulations in a way that really does set communities back. And so during this pandemic, there's no reason why during a pandemic that this becomes a priority, that you have to then roll back these regulations. The banks are now claiming, and they were able to, get this administration to agree that while we need to be focused so much on the pandemic, that we don't have time to focus on, serving, Black and brown communities. You can't do both. Somehow the bank does not have enough manpower or enough capacity to handle both things. And it's a double slap in the face because we see that economically, the Black and brown communities are being most affected by what's happening with COVID. We saw when they rolled out the program from the SBA, the Payroll Protection Program, that Black and brown businesses were least able to access that program. And if it were left up to the banks, wouldn't have been able to access much of it at all. It was really CDFIs and community banks that stepped in to fill the gap to allow businesses to even access these funds. So, we see this trend where our money is good, but we don't deserve the same services and we don't have access to the same opportunities that others have. And so part of what we're doing at the Land Bank is we are intentional about making sure we're inclusive with these neighborhoods, that if we're talking about a person buying a property, that we want them to be from the neighborhood and we want them to be beholden to the neighborhood in terms of the quality work that they do, who they sell the properties to, who they employ. All those things are important to us.
Should people still be buying properties right now? Is that okay? Is that a good thing? Will that help? If they can get lending, as you just talked about,
right?
The relaxed CRA, is it smart to buy property, whether you're a first-time homeowner or an investor?
Yeah, I will say, I always will say, you have to look at your individual situation. So right now, if you're not employed or if your employment is not stable, then that should be your first priority. If you're in a situation where you're able to save money and or you have access to money, whether it's friends and family or whether it's a lender that you have a relationship with, I think now there is an opportunity to buy properties, because right now so many people are looking at it not to do it. Anytime you're not competing with folks, I think that you have a leg up. Pre-COVID, what we do know is that inventory in Chicago was at an all-time low, and that we were starting to see the prices be bid up because people were really looking for that inventory.
Right.
The inventory will go up some, but the amount of people that are looking and their appetite to invest right now is a bit lower. And so that's where you get the chance that that same property you were looking at, instead of having 5 bidders, maybe there's only 2 bidders. And so you have a better probability of getting those properties at this moment. So yeah, if you've got the resources, I think this is a good time to buy. And this is why, even during the pandemic, we released 250 homes to our website as an opportunity for people to still be able to build wealth, to be able to purchase a home from us for $10, $15, $20,000, rehab it, and sell it to a homeowner, or to be able to live in those homes. That opportunity is still there, and we did that even at the height of the pandemic. So we see this as an opportunity, absolutely.
Do you think the housing market will crash?
I don't think it will crash. I think we'll see a market correction and a slowdown. I think we've already started to see that. We're seeing that new housing starts has slowed down. We're seeing that sales are slowing down. Part of it is that there's some uncertainty with the lenders. So people who have already been pre-approved or in the process of closing, we see those closings happening, but they're doing a final verification. They're doing a final credit check. They're trying to dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure.
Because if you look at 2007 and 2008, that was a completely different story. Is that necessary and is that needed?
Well, so I think checking is fine. I think what we learned in from 2007 and 8 is you don't want to seize up the credit markets. You don't want to get to a point where you're not lending at all. That is necessary. That recycling of capital is necessary to keep things going. So I think that lesson has been learned. Unfortunately, when we talk about things like tightening credit, ultimately it's Black and brown communities that are hit first. The credit scores go up. The down payment requirements go up. Things that traditionally been barriers for Black and brown home ownership, those barriers are erected, if you will, when we say we're tightening things up. And so, that's the unfortunate piece that we always have to fight with, is as soon as there's some pandemic or some emergency that happens, it seems that the first place that people retrench is in the Black community in terms of the efforts and the resources they make available. The problem is there's still a need. So that's when your predatory lenders come out. That's when other people come out, and you've got to deal, with that that dynamic as well, because they need to there.
Who is CCBLA working with to prevent more of these barriers from happening to the Black and brown communities, the devastation, or even maybe equip smarter Black and brown consumers so they won't fall into predatory lending?
Yeah, so this puts us in a pretty different position because one of the things that we're precluded from doing is the steering, right? To pick one lender and say you should lose this person versus that person. But I think part of what happens is as we go through and as we do this work, there are certainly different lenders that rise to the top or that are able to still work with our developers. So during the first, the week of our board meeting was the first week that we went on remote working remotely. So this was the week of March 16th. And in that week, I probably had 30 conversations with different lenders around town that had been working with us, or around the country that had been working with our developers. And I really wanted to get a sense of what they were looking at. And pretty clearly, they divided into 2 camps. There was one camp that was, we're committed to working with folks and we're going to continue to do so. We may be taking a pause right now to make sure we have the right cash and to make sure that our policies are in place, but we're committed to work. And there's another group that were like, what, we don't know what's happening. We're pulling out of Chicago. We're pulling out of these neighborhoods. We're pulling out of these markets. And so what's happening is that there's a bit of natural selection that those groups that are staying in are going to reap the benefits, because there's still that appetite for people to do this work. There's still the inventory that we have available. And those groups that are now making themselves available are finding less competition and are getting high quality folks to work with. So, our part, if you will, is making sure that we keep, both inventory available at the right price, and two, that we keep encouraging our developers to work with us to make sure they don't overextend, but to make sure that they stay in the game right now, because this is now a time and a unique time for opportunities if you are committed and if you have the ability to do so. So that's what we're doing, and that's our part that we're playing.
What accountability can consumers hold to lenders or put on lenders so it won't be a repeat of previous housing issues, predatory lending? How can the consumers protect themselves?
It's tough, right? Because the normal protections that you have, the federal government provides those protections, right? I mean, you have the consumer Federal Protection Board, Financial Protection Board, that's typically there to be your ombudsman for these sort of complaints, and that's been gutted by this administration. You have CRA and those requirements, and that's being undermined by this administration. And so, unfortunately, the thing that we have to be able to do is education, and for people to know and understand what their options are. What we saw doing predatory lending in 07, 08 is that even people that could qualify for a traditional mortgage or an FHA were being steered and into these predatory products. And part of it was just not understanding that they had the credit score and they had the credentials to be able to get, a better product. So part of it is education. And I know there's a number of groups that are out here that are doing that education, that ongoing education. And I think that's going to be a big piece of it, because right now the typical protections that you would have are being undermined by this administration. So I'd say the other thing that people can do to help protect themselves is to vote. And for this next election, understand that the vote that they have and a political voice, the choices that you're making go beyond just racist or those sort of views. I mean, we have and understand that from this administration, but what people have to understand is that this administration also believes in deregulation to a point where the free market always puts the Black and brown community at a disadvantage when you let free market dynamics run. There's no such thing as trickle down. Trickle down doesn't work. So this idea that we will make corporations rich and make them, be prosperous and for them to do well, and then somehow that economic benefits accrues to communities is a false premise. It doesn't work on a local level where you only focus on downtown and don't, invest in the neighborhoods. And it doesn't work in a corporation where you pay the CEO millions of dollars and people are still, making minimum wage for the jobs that they do. So the vote is an economic one, of which at least what's being espoused, and I think what's going to be pushed, through the Democratic platform and the progressives on the left that are going to be able to pull, I think, Biden in that direction, is that we've got to start thinking about the middle class, and we got to start thinking about the most vulnerable and what we're going to do and put protections in place to make sure we have things like a basic universal income, and to make sure that we have a wage that people can make, and to be able to put back in place the infrastructure, these protections and CRA and things of that nature that people don't think about, but those undergirdings make it possible. So if you think about what the federal government does, the things that they emphasize are the things that grow. So when they decide that they want to provide corporate subsidy, right, corporate welfare, those corporations do wonderful. Right now, you've got Amazon that made untold billions last year and paid zero in income tax, right? So how does that work? I mean, you and I are paying 25%, 28%, whatever that percentage is of the money we make, but they're, as a corporation, are being subsidized and being supported by this government to where they don't have to pay anything. That doesn't
And
make
it's
any sense.
unfortunate.
So
We're
these are
hearing
things to
more
vote.
other larger corporations that already, we're hearing they're about to get a bailout.
Right. And so, you know, we look at a stimulus check, $1,200 checks and whatever is going out, and that's just a drop in the bucket to what corporations are getting. And we saw that with that payroll protection program, where you got small businesses are struggling for a $100,000 loan, and you got the Lakers and Shake Shack and, you know, Ruth Chris and all these different people getting tens of millions of dollars in that same you know pot of money. And you go, how many small businesses could you help with a $10 million allocation, right?
And the economy, like, that's what makes our local economy work, is small businesses.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the tactic we take. If you look at the land bank and look at who we work with, we're working with small business owners. They're real estate developers, but typically less than 5 employees, right? You know, revenues of less than $1 million a year in terms of top line revenue. They're making a living for themselves and for their business, and they're making things go. But it's a lot of them that we're working with that are in these communities that provide an engine, because oftentimes they're the ones working in these communities well before the big time investors and the big developers want to be involved. They're the ones that are tilling the soil and getting the area ready for the larger investment. So, you know, we're supporting them because they support the local economies. So even during COVID, right now we estimate that anywhere between 1,200 to 1,500 people are still working because of the inventory that we have and the work that people are doing out here. They're being socially responsible with the social distancing and the mask, and they're making sure that they are taking those precautions. But these are families that are still being able to work, and people that have food on their table because we continue to do the work that we do. So, you know, before we got on the air, you were asking about our work. The land bank's working. We're fully operational. We're working remotely. We are still inspecting new properties. We are acquiring properties. We're selling properties. We're doing our inspections. And we're still available. We're not in the office, so we're not taking phone calls, but we are available via email. And we've been doing a number of these Skype meetings and different things around to make sure that people know and understand how to work with us. So we are committed to making sure that our services are available throughout this time.
Seems like you all haven't missed a beat. How has this impacted construction or development, COVID-19 specifically? What is that like with having a construction crew developing a house or a commercial property?
Sure. So it's a couple of ways this affected things. The first thing is that because of the tightening of credit, we've seen a slowdown in the speed at which things happen, right? So, you know, like I said, we've had a number of people that had houses under contract that we had to grant extensions because the lenders are saying, well, we're committed, but right now we need to see what's going to happen with the stock market, or we're going to need to see what happens with the restrictions. And so they want to get a 30-day extension. So we've seen that. So there's been a slowdown, just a number of in the activity. So it's happening just at a slower pace. And then in terms of the rehabs, because of social distancing and because you need to be very careful on how you stage your trades and the number of people that you can have in an area, that we've seen the rehabs take longer, right? Because you have to be more cognizant. You can't go in a situation where you can ram 3 or 4 trades in a room at the same time and have them working. And as those contractors have had their issues, the availability of contractors has also been tested, because you've got different contractors that aren't comfortable working in this space, or aren't comfortable working with new people. And as they send people out, they want to make sure that they don't overextend themselves. And so you have this dynamic. So things are happening slower, but it's still happening. And what's important that is it's still going on, and we don't see a freeze. And that was my big concern. It's very hard to start up something once you freeze it. That's what we saw in 07, right? 08. That once things get to a freeze, it takes a long time to get the engine started back up again. So right now, to keep things going, even if it's slower, it's better than freezing. And I think that's how recovery will happen much sooner, because we don't have this freeze that we had before.
How do consumers, and I'm asking this in a different way, I kind of asked you earlier, how do they protect themselves? Where could they go? I know you said it's a number of resources. How do they educate themselves? How do they protect themselves? Because in 2007, 2008, some people didn't know that they were in these jacked up deals and didn't know that this was predatory lending. And even decades back, they didn't know that until this was contracts, whatever, sharing, or, you didn't really own the house, you just had a contract. So how do you, if you're about to still buy a property or even considering, what do you do? Where could they go? Where would you point someone to say, I want to make sure that I'm not about to get played. I want to make sure that this bank is going to do X, Y, and Z. Where would you point them to?
Sure. So right now, if you're going to buy a house, I would absolutely recommend that you go and receive house counseling. Much like marriage counseling, where before you get into that lifelong commitment, you're going to talk and make sure that you have the tools that you need to make it work. The house is the biggest purchase that we make. I don't know of anybody that goes out and just on a whim goes out and buys, $1,000 worth of shoes. And, there's always some research that you do, right? You're going to look to see where's the best deal, where can I make my money stretch? Even if I'm committed to buying XYZ purse, where's the best place to get it? So if we can put that much money and that much care into our purses and our cars, why wouldn't we do the same thing for the house? So right now, there's HUD counseling agencies, certified HUD counseling agencies around town, Urban League, Genesis Housing, Spanish Coalition for Housing, or a few that stand out, Neighborhood Housing Services, offer those services. If you just Google HUD counseling agencies within Chicago, you'll find a number of these agencies that pop out. But what happens here is that it's not just credit scoring and what it takes to buy the house, but it's also how you evaluate the type of loans that you are able to get and the criteria to go into it, and then the true cost of home ownership. Because the other thing that happens is, you have a mortgage. Well, part of your mortgage right now is the taxes. And what happens with taxes completely will adjust the payments that you're making. And so you got to understand that and take that into consideration and be able to have a framework to walk this through to say, okay, if this property appreciates and the taxes go from X to Z, can I afford that? And is that still something that I want to be able to do, right? Because we say we want to increase property values, right? But one consequence of increased property values is higher taxes. And we've got to be able to absorb that and take that into our calculus on how we do things. So it's important that we do that same amount of research that we would do for other purchases for the house. So that's probably the single greatest thing that people can do to arm themselves, that education and that pre-work beforehand. Part of that also is that these counseling agencies are also linked into the lending. They understand the lending products, so they can help you and educate you in terms of the kind of things you want to avoid and the kind of things you want to see as you're going through and doing these loans. The easy rule is if it sounds too good to be true when it comes to house mortgages, it is. You've got people out here that are predatory. That means that they're going to lure you in with something that sounds right. So if you got a 500 credit score, right? If you know that you have no money in the bank, it sells you the pipe dream that, hey, I can get you to this house of your dreams for less money that you're paying in rent, this, that, and the other. It sounds too good to be true. It probably is. Take the time to educate yourself and take the time with that purchase, because it is a big purchase. If more people do that and take that time, you'll find these resources available to you to be able to make that worth it. The other thing that I would say, and this is an offshoot of the counseling, is find you and take the time to find a real estate agent that that works on your behalf, right? So we have the Dearborn Realtors Group, right? African American Real Estate Association. You have NAREB, National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Brokers. You've then got your mainstream CAR, the Chicago Association of Realtors, or Main Street in the suburbs. There's no lack of people that look like you, that understand your situation, that are in the real estate industry, that can help you find exactly what you're looking for. So you're not out here now just looking through Zillow and Redfin, and those are good resources just to see what's out there. But get a real estate professional that can help you along the way, because they can help you not only locate what you need, but help you with the financing and be another person working on your behalf as you're going through this process. And so a lot of people think of real estate as like this very solitary thing that I'm going to soldier through it and find this out. And it doesn't have to be that way. And if you think about other purchases, for a major purchase, I don't know of anybody that goes out to make a major purchase without somebody that they trust there with them, just to give their opinion. Even if that person isn't going to buy anything, they're just there to say, yes, that dress looks nice. No, that car is too whatever. You know, you've got people that you trust. It's the same idea when it comes to real estate. We have to use these same principles, but just we need someone that we trust there to be able to help us through that process. And doing just that, those things will be helpful, even as we have these other forces conspiring against us, to be able to have a fighting chance at having and making sound purchases.
Rob Rhodes, Executive Director of Cook County Land Bank. That was a mouthful, but that was great information. I've had people who bought properties and was not hands-on and was first-time homeowners, and now they're going through hell. So that's really good advice. Anything else do you want to add as we wrap up, and I'll let you get back to your puppy?
So a couple of things. I've been told this from my group. Make sure that you follow us on social media, because right now, all the things that we're doing, the social media is a place that we're able to make sure that people are aware of all the great products that we have, new programs, places where you can find resources. So we're on Twitter at CCLBA. We're on Instagram at Cook County Land Bank Authority. Also on Facebook, Cook County Land Bank Authority, and LinkedIn, Cook County Land Bank Authority. So we're in those places. You can also go to our website, cookcountylandbank.org, and you can sign up for our newsletter. And that newsletter will also let you know where we have our deals, our sales, and will also be a place to get information with regards to meetings that we're having and our board of directors meetings that people like to come and hear, you know, what's being discussed at the board level. All that is, you receive all that notification through our newsletter. So those are ways that you can keep in contact with us and have any questions.
Oh, go on. I typed it up and now I'm following you on. Look what face I see smiling at me. The executive director of the land bank. You're doing, you had a meeting today at 1:00. Well, God bless your ministry. You're out here helping people in Chicago, having Zoom meetings, lunch bite with Rob Rose.
Yep. So met with the Southside Builders Association today, so the members can know and understand how to work with us and walk them through the process of selecting properties and being able to add to the developer base that we're working with. So yeah, it's important. You know, the thing of it is, you know, I hear all the time, man, you guys are a best kept secret, or, you know, I wish I knew more about it. And so what we're really trying to do is take every opportunity to make sure that people know and understand who we are and how we're able to work and help in building and stabilizing communities.
Awesome. Anything else that you want to leave the consumers with as they come out of COVID-19? Any final takeaway?
I will say this: the fear of something is often worse than that something actually happening. So we can't let fear drive our behavior, you know. So we want to respect what's happening with COVID. but we can't fear it. We want to respect what's happening in the economy, but we can't fear it. Now is an opportunity for many people to be able to start to have time to think about what they want to do and how they want to do it, whether it's a new skill, a job or career change, or whatever it is. Take advantage of this slowdown where the world has slowed down and allow you to catch your breath and to do that. And so this is one of those situations where you can make something good out of something bad happening. And that comes down to home ownership. If you ever wanted to own a home, now's the time to really think about and understand what that means. If you want to invest in property, now's the time to figure that out, where you have some time to really think and look at the resources available. So I would say for everyone, let's not operate in fear. Let's conquer the fear and really develop a plan, because right now there is a plan for our community. We got to have a plan for our own selves, because there is a plan for us, and it doesn't involve us and it's not to our benefit. So if we're going to survive this, we have to develop our own plan and then be able to execute. And it really starts with ourselves and being able to understand what we want to do and then being able to execute.
Thank you so much, Rob Rose, Executive Director of the Cook County Land Bank. You have an amazing day.